Beneath the neon lights and velvet curtains of a glittering casino, fortunes were being made, or so it seemed. To outsiders, it looked like the perfect empire. High rollers at the tables, champagne flowing, security guards keeping watch, and profits so steady they seemed immune to the chaos of chance. But behind the glamour, the casino wasn't making its fortune from the spin of the wheel or the shuffle of the deck. It was making it from a Ponzi scheme. Imagine a business that thrives not on winnings or losses, but on trust. Investors were told their money was fueling the casino's expansion, new hotels, gaming floors, and VIP lounges. They were promised steady, risk-free returns, guaranteed by a house that supposedly never loses. And who would question it? The casino was a symbol of power, luxury, and success. If there was ever a place that looked too big to fail, this was it. The truth was more chilling. The money never went where they said it would. New investments were funneled into paying off older investors, keeping the illusion alive. The casino itself was little more than a stage set, a backdrop for one of the most elaborate financial cons of its time. You might think you'd never be fooled by such a scheme, but standing in that casino, surrounded by flashing lights and the promise of wealth, even the smartest investors believed. Because the most dangerous bets aren't the ones placed on cards or dice, they're the ones placed on trust. Every Ponzi scheme needs a mask, and this one wore the mask of constant success. Regular investors saw monthly statements filled with profits. Early participants bragged about doubling their stakes in record time, and every time someone cashed out, it became proof that the system worked. The casino became a living metaphor for certainty. Where gamblers at the blackjack table sweated with risk, investors behind the scenes felt like they'd found the cheat code. No volatility, no losing streaks, just calm, consistent returns. And that calm was exactly what made it so believable. This was no accident. The schemers behind the curtain understood human psychology better than any card shark. They knew that volatility breeds suspicion, but predictability breeds trust. When the world outside the casino was uncertain, the steady climb of their investments felt like a lifeline. Yet, those numbers weren't real. They were fabrications designed to buy time, to pull more people into the game, to build a taller house of cards. And like gamblers chasing the illusion of a hot streak, investors ignored the impossibility of endless winning. Because the cruelest trick wasn't convincing people they could beat the odds. It was convincing them the odds no longer existed. It didn't start with ads or cold calls. It started with whispers. A referral from a friend, an introduction at a gala, an exclusive opportunity offered only to those with the right connections. Investors weren't just putting money into a casino, they were being welcomed into a private club. Scarcity became the bait. Seats at the table were limited. Minimum investments kept rising. Some people were even turned away, not because their money wasn't wanted, but because turning them away made the scheme look even more real. If you were accepted, you felt chosen, special, elite. This was affinity fraud in its most seductive form. The victims weren't tricked by random strangers. They were invited in by people they trusted, business partners, community leaders, even relatives. To ask questions would feel like betrayal. To doubt the opportunity would feel like doubting your own circle. And that's why it worked so well. The schemers didn't just build a financial con, they built a social one. The trust wasn't in numbers. It wasn't even in the casino. It was in the friend who leaned close and whispered, "Don't miss this." Because in the end, the trap didn't close with contracts or signatures. It closed with pride, belonging, and the fear of being left behind. The casino's chandeliers gleamed brighter than ever. Rolls-Royces lined the valet entrance. Lavish parties filled ballrooms where champagne never stopped flowing. On the surface, this was a temple of wealth, a living advertisement that screamed success. But all of it, the cars, the lights, the glamour, wasn't just for guests. It was theater, designed to convince investors their money was safe. The masterminds behind the scheme understood the psychology of spectacle. Luxury is a powerful drug. When you see gold leaf on ceilings and billionaires at poker tables, you don't question where the profits come from. You assume it's real. Investors toured the casino floors, saw the opulence with their own eyes, and walked away with certainty that their fortunes were multiplying. But appearances deceive. The casino was indeed making money, but not nearly enough to cover the promised returns. The excess, the grandeur, the endless nights of glittering lights, they were funded not by profits, but by the very money investors believed was being safely managed. You might think you'd be skeptical, but when everything around you sparkles, it's easy to mistake shine for substance. The scheme didn't just sell investments, it sold an image, because in the end, the most convincing lie isn't whispered in shadows, it's shouted in gold and neon. Every month, like clockwork, investors receive polished reports, spreadsheets with rising profits, charts climbing in perfect predictable arcs, statements printed on letterhead, complete with signatures and seals that looked official enough to fool anyone. And fool them it did. Investors flipped through the pages with pride, showing off their earnings at family dinners, at country clubs, even at the casino's own high-roller suites. No one stopped to question the numbers. Why would they? On paper, the system was flawless. The genius of the scam lay in its simplicity. Numbers are cheap, charts are easy to fake. But to the human mind, they're anchors of reality. Seeing proof in black and white, proof that can be held in your hands, turns suspicion into silence. Behind the curtain, no real profits existed. The charts were theater props, the numbers were mirages, and those carefully printed reports weren't financial evidence. They were tickets into the next round of betrayal. Because in a Ponzi scheme, paperwork doesn't reflect reality, it replaces it. It never unravels slowly. It shatters in an instant. A single investor demands a withdrawal too large to cover. A journalist starts asking the wrong questions. A regulator stumbles onto inconsistencies. The illusion can hold for years, until suddenly it can't hold at all. In this casino Ponzi, the collapse came like a lightning strike. One day, investors were sipping cocktails in penthouse lounges. The next, they were lined up outside locked doors, demanding answers from managers who had already disappeared. The same neon lights that once symbolized endless wealth now flickered over scenes of chaos and betrayal. The psychology flipped instantly. The same investors who once boasted about their insider knowledge now realized they were trapped in the same nightmare as everyone else. Panic spread faster than reason, and the glittering palace of wealth was revealed for what it always had been, a hollow shell built on lies. Because in Ponzi schemes, collapse doesn't arrive gradually, it arrives all at once, like the lights going out in a casino at midnight. The deepest wound wasn't measured in dollars, it was measured in betrayal. These investors hadn't just put their money into a casino, they had put their faith into the people running it. Friends had vouched for it. Business partners had staked their reputations on it. Some victims had convinced their own families to join, only to watch everything evaporate. Trust is the currency of every Ponzi scheme, and here it was spent lavishly. The casino operators didn't need to persuade strangers. They needed to persuade one respected figure, who in turn persuaded dozens more. Soon, the fraud spread like wildfire through social circles, professional networks, even religious communities. When the truth surfaced, the shame was unbearable. Victims weren't just angry at the casino, they were angry at themselves. They felt complicit, guilty for dragging others into the illusion. That guilt was heavier than the financial loss, because money can be earned again. Trust, once broken, rarely returns. Because the cruelest con isn't stealing someone's fortune, it's making them wonder if they ever truly knew the people around them at all. Courtrooms filled with the sound of quiet weeping and angry shouts. Once powerful investors now stood in line to testify as victims. The casino that had once been hailed as a symbol of prosperity was now a symbol of ruin, its gilded doors sealed shut, its name dragged through endless headlines. Forensic accountants pored over false records, tracing where billions had vanished. Prosecutors described the scheme as a financial virus, infecting every corner it touched. Families who once believed their future was secured were left with nothing but debt and despair. Retirements vanished. College funds evaporated. Generations of security wiped out in the blink of an eye. The masterminds sat in court, stone-faced, denying responsibility. They blamed the markets, the regulators, even the victims themselves. But their empire of lies was too large to disguise. One by one, their carefully constructed masks cracked under cross-examination. Because every Ponzi has an endgame, and it never ends with riches. It ends in shame, collapse, and the cold sterility of prison walls. How could it happen again? That's the question everyone asks. After Madoff, after so many headlines, after countless documentaries and warnings, how could people still fall for the same trap? The answer is simple. Greed and fear never change. Technology may evolve. Scams may look more sophisticated, but the core manipulation, the promise of safety, the illusion of exclusivity, the mask of trust, remains timeless. People don't fall for Ponzi schemes because they're foolish. They fall because they're human. And each time the warning signs were there, returns too consistent, promises too smooth, paperwork too perfect. Yet investors ignored them, because the lie was easier to live with than the truth. The tragedy is that these lessons are never truly learned. They're remembered for a generation, maybe two. Then the cycle begins again, dressed in new clothes, speaking in new jargon, but whispering the same old seduction. Because the deadliest schemes don't just steal money, they steal memory. Casinos are built on a simple truth: the house always wins. But in this story, the house wasn't winning by chance, it was winning by design. From the first dollar invested to the last, the game was rigged. Not by odds, not by dice, but by human psychology. The schemers understood that certainty is the ultimate lure, that people will trade caution for comfort, doubt for belonging, skepticism for the soothing voice of someone who looks like they know the way. They weaponized hope, disguised greed as safety, and turned trust into the sharpest blade. And when the lights finally dimmed, when the billion-dollar illusion crumbled into dust, one haunting truth remained. This wasn't just a story about a casino. It was a story about us, our desires, our blind spots, our endless chase for stability in a world that offers none. Because in the end, the greatest con isn't the one played at the tables, it's the one played in our minds. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.